After living in Bali for half a year, I went back to Germany, but I immediately knew that I want to live on an island again. But as I am an European person, there is not much option. A friend of mine was already living here in Cyprus and he told me how amazing it is here, and when I flew here and I looked at everything, I knew this is it. But Malta was definitely a nice alternative option. Hey everybody, it's Rico, and in this video I'm going to talk about Malta versus Cyprus from a tax and business standpoint, and which is the best option for you. I live in Cyprus for more than 3 years now, and I know a lot of people from Malta personally as well as professionally. So let's talk about the different taxes in each country. Let's start with the corporate tax. In Cyprus, it is pretty straightforward. 12.5% fixed corporate tax on all your profits. They may raise the corporate tax to 15% if there is going to be a global taxation minimum. However, even then, it's still relatively low, not a big difference to the corporate tax that we have now, and we still fulfill the global requirements for the corporate tax, which is actually a very good thing because we are fulfilling the standards that other countries set for the whole world. Now, corporate tax in Malta is a little bit more complicated, but it is officially 35%, which is super high, but you do get a refund after 2 years of paying the corporate tax, and the refund can be something from 30% up to 35%. So effectively you could even have a corporate taxation from 0 to 5% in Malta. But there is a caveat, so let's dive a little bit deeper. First of all, this refund only applies to foreign income, meaning non-Malta income. So you're generating money all over the world. Second, it requires a very complex holding structure with foreign companies and all of that in order to be eligible for that refund after 2 years. So you would have the benefit of a very low, close to zero corporate taxation. However, it is not very sustainable in my opinion, and it only makes sense in very rare cases that I will talk about later on. So, I said that Maltese company structures are a little bit complicated. And why is that? That is because of the definitions of residential, non-residential, shareholders and companies. In order to be eligible for all the tax benefits that you would have in Malta, you need to be a non-domiciled person living in Malta. But we also have the non-dom status here in Cyprus, and that is actually the exact reason why a lot of Cypriots people would move to Malta, and some Malta people would move to Cyprus, because then they are non-domiciled here because they are not born in Cyprus or Malta, and they also enjoy the benefits that the expats do that come from, let's say, Central Europe. But, maybe you already realize where I'm going. And that is, in Cyprus you do have your local Cyprus Limited Company. In Malta, on the other hand, you need to have foreign companies that are not incorporated in Malta. And here a very big buzzword is the CFC rules. Control foreign companies, and they control foreign companies. So in Cyprus, they are actually not interested because, okay, you have your Cyprus Limited Company, but you also live in Cyprus and you're applying and playing after the rule book. In Malta, on the other hand, you usually, in most cases, don't do it with a Maltese company, but with a foreign company. And here, the CFC rules apply. Maybe there will nothing happen today, maybe not tomorrow. But as I said, this is the reason why Maltese company structures in most cases are not sustainable and healthy in my opinion, because it could backfire in, let's say, a few years from now. But you as a professional business person, of course, want to be prepared and you don't want that to happen. But here I also have to mention that Malta is actually aware of that, and they are already planning on changing their tax scheme or incentive program so that this will not backfire in the future. Malta is actually heavily dependent on those foreign companies, foreign income, and even the gaming industry, because this is a hotspot for the gaming people and businesses that move to Malta. Of course, they do have tourism, they have local businesses and all of that, but those modern, new age gaming companies and other expats, they are very important for Malta as well, because they drove a lot of revenue within the last few years and even decades. So they will probably not want to get rid of those, and they will probably come up with another very interesting idea, but at the moment we don't know how it will look like. So it is very uncertain at the moment. In theory, probably nothing will happen within the next few months, maybe even years. Probably something around 2025 we will know more about what the new tax scheme will look like in Malta. But in Cyprus everything is pretty clear. We do have our corporate tax, that's it, none foreign companies, whatever, all of that. And this is the difference regarding the corporate taxation. Probably one of the most important taxes that you're looking at if you're a business. Now we are going to talk about the dividend tax, which is probably also one of the most important taxes if you're an entrepreneur. And here in Cyprus, it is pretty straightforward again. And that is, we do have 0% official dividend tax. However, we do have to pay a NHS contribution in every dividend, and that is at the moment 2.65%. So effectively, the dividend tax you can say is 2.65% at the moment here in Cyprus. In Malta, the dividend tax ranges from 0% up until 35%, depending on your company structure. But getting down to 0% is definitely possible if you do it in the correct way. However, the question if this is sustainable is another question again. And if you're an expat living in Malta with the non-dom status, you will probably get down to 0% very easily if you do it correctly. Talking about the non-dom status, this is the single most important factor why you will be able to get those tax benefits in each country. And a lot of countries have a lot of different requirements in order to get the non-dom status, but for Malta specifically it is to stay there at least 183 days a year in the country. And some other requirements as well, but this is like the most important one. In Cyprus, you need to stay at least 60 days a year in the country in order to get the non-dom status, as well with some other requirements. But this, to me personally, is a huge factor, because here you have to stay half a year in Malta, and here you only have to stay 2 months in Cyprus. So if you're a digital nomad entrepreneur wanting to see the world, I think this is also definitely something very, very important and interesting to you. The next point is the business incorporation as well as accounting. And here we also have very big differences between those two countries. In Cyprus, for example, the incorporation and accounting is pretty easy, straightforward, and even cheap, I would say, because you can incorporate the company even remotely, and if you have the right agency, it is very cheap. Accounting in Cyprus, for me personally, I almost have to do nothing, because my accounting software just sends everything to my accountant and he then processes it. I just have to do some signatures at the end of the year for the audit, and that's basically it. In Malta, on the other hand, because you need this holding structure with foreign companies and all of that, it is actually expensive to incorporate this structure and also expensive to maintain it, because you need a lot of accounting between those companies. Also, many people told me that it can be quite hard in Malta to do all of that because the bureaucracy is very slow. And I'm not saying that Cyprus is very fast in that regard, but for me personally, everything that I wanted so far, I got it within a pretty short period of time. Probably this is because I have a very good accountant here in Cyprus, so if you want to have a recommendation, check out the video description. General important notes on the difference between Cyprus and Malta is that in both countries we have to pay social insurance on our income, but in general in both countries you usually have a very low salary, because it makes most sense to pay out as much as a dividend as possible because it is tax-free. Then also, as I said, Malta is like the hotspot for gaming, gambling and that industry, and Cyprus is more the hotspot for like forex, brokers, because of the CySEC license. So depending on what individual business type you are and what industry you're in, maybe this is also a factor for you to decide where to go. Regarding local banking, in both countries it's not like the easiest in the world. In Malta they are actually just starting now, and in Cyprus we had the 2012 crisis, and it is somewhat expensive to have a local bank account here in Cyprus, but it works pretty decent. My general recommendation is to work with an online bank, with a fintech company. But since both countries were partially grey listed in the past and this and that, it is not like super easy to open up a online bank account with all of the modern cool fintech companies, but I know some ways in order to do that. So if you want to get help with that, check out the video description as well. And before I'm going to do the summary and tell you what's probably the best decision for you, I want to talk a little bit about the lifestyle in both countries. funny enough, both countries actually look very similar. So if you have pictures from Malta and Cyprus next to each other, you will not see big differences. But there are. For example, Cyprus is 29 times bigger than Malta, but we only have around 2 to 3 times the population of Malta. Meaning, in Malta we have much more people on a much smaller island, whereas here in Cyprus we have a lot of land and not so many people relatively. Generally in Cyprus there are a lot of things you can do even for free, and I have a lot of videos talking about that on my channel, so definitely check it out. And for Malta, what I heard so far is that as there are so many people on such a small island, there is not so much you can do outdoors. It's more like going to a restaurant, going to the beaches and doing all of that. But since the infrastructure is so busy, it also takes a lot of time to go or to drive from place A to B with the car. So just go to both countries, take a look, book an Airbnb for a week or two and decide on your own what lifestyle you like more. Now, talking about what is better for you individually as well as your business. First thing I would look at is the business type you are running. Are you into gambling? Probably Malta. Are you into Forex and brokerages? Probably Cyprus. Also, a very important factor is how long do you want to stay in the country each year and in general. Because in Cyprus you only need to stay here 2 months in order to have the non-dom status, and Malta it's 6 months. Factor number 3 is the location that you're currently in and how often you want to travel between other countries. Because Cyprus is geographically actually in Asia, whereas Malta is geographically still in Central Europe. So for you maybe this is a pretty big difference, and it is important for you to drive to your home country or to another country on a regular basis. And then the last factor is the budget that you have, because in Cyprus it is actually somewhat relatively cheap to run a business here, whereas in Malta, depending on your company structure, of course, it can get expensive. Also, the rental prices are different, the grocery prices are different and all of that. So definitely it's important for you to do a little bit more of a research. If you want to get help with that, definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel. I make more awesome videos. Also watch that video about living in Cyprus, and I will see you in the next video.